Okay, sit down, buckle up, and get ready. We're going to take your mind on another journey these next 2 hours with a most remarkable individual. He is Dr. Eric T. Karlstrom, Emeritus Professor of Geography, who has taught at the university level for some 30 years. He has a number of videos on YouTube, so I want you all to remember his name. You'll see it up there during the program tonight in guests, and you'll hear it enough. Eric Karlstrom is a man who doesn't mince words. He has begun to speak out on things that you're not supposed to talk about. One of his newest videos, just put out in May, Precursors to GangStalking. Now, you've all heard the term GangStalking somewhere or another. Probably most of us couldn't sit down and write a couple of paragraphs or even a couple of sentences about it, unless you've been listening to this program. Then you certainly could. But this is one of the topics we're going to discuss tonight. Another one has to do with 9/11 and the New World Order. You can find both of Dr. Karlstrom's websites right under his name in the guest section. And he is standing by now on Skype, abroad, as they say. We'll see how good the connection is, and hopefully it's not bad. Are you there, Dr. Karlstrom?
Yes, I am, Jeff. It's good to be with you tonight.
Thank you.
Even across the great distances we are, that separate us, but modern technology allows us to have this conversation, and I'm very much looking forward to talking to somebody like yourself who actually has got quite a bit of knowledge and experience about this subject.
Well, thank you. I have wondered where the future, if we have a future as a species, one day somebody like myself may be interviewing somebody like yourself, and yourself might be on Mars. Who knows? I mean, those things are all possible, and they may be in the future if we can survive. And at this point in time, I think our future is rather questionable. It's rather questionable to me, at least. How does it look to you?
Well, that's such a vast topic.
It's only a 10-hour answer, but
Yeah, I just have to have a certain optimism that, I do have a belief in a basic Christian worldview, and I do believe that the good guys win in the end, and that it's our job here to do our best with, what's in front of us. And, I retired from my teaching career about 5 years ago, but really kicked my research into new directions. I've got several websites. If you don't mind, I'll just rattle them off here.
They're listed under your name, but please go ahead, Eric. Do that. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and these were websites. Two of them I had established well before I retired in 2011, and one was 911nwo.com. Another one is naturalclimatechange.us or naturalclimatechange.org. Out of the 911nwo.com site, a new site has morphed as of last fall, and that is GangStalking MindControlCults.com. I think these operations are very much related. I think 9/11 and the man-caused global warming fraud are kind of foundational lies on which the New World Order hopes to establish itself and its power base. And I'm sure the New World Order doesn't appreciate people like myself who, go around trying to disprove these fairly blatant lies. And so the gang stalking thing is, a huge topic. I think it's I think it's, we're dealing with the tip of a very, very huge iceberg that, we can call it other things. We can call it revolution in military affairs, as the Pentagon did in the 90s. We can call it fourth generation warfare or irregular warfare or unconventional warfare
asymmetrical
or civil military
warfare.
Operations.
Yeah.
So what we're dealing with here is the national security establishment. We're dealing with the sharp end of the stick to take out dissidents and pretty much any individuals and groups that are out of favor with the power structure can be targeted, and then they're in this world of lies and spies and endless setups and actually being experimented on apparently with directed energy weapons. This is why we have a revolution in military affairs, because there's new weaponry. All this Tesla technology, is brand new this public doesn't know much about it. The military's 50 to 80 years ahead technologically. So we're talking, microwave weapons, radio frequencies, millimeter wave, acoustic weapons. We're talking lasers. And this is now a huge worldwide business as well. So we're dealing with, a military industrial complex that has also got its fingers in all aspects of society. So the GangStalking is a highly inadequate, I think, name for something much bigger. And I have Jeff, come up with an acronym. I've been working on these acronyms for a while. And what I've come up with now in two recent posts on my GangStalking Mind Control Cults.com website is Gog's New Gestapo. and that stands for Global Organized Gang Stalking Neuro Warfare Groups, Electronic Slavery, Torture, and PSYOP Operations.
Now, let me ask you to hold on a second. I want that to settle in with people. And I do want you to listen carefully to what Dr. Carlstrom says. He said acoustic weapons. That's probably a whole nother program. The military has been involved with acoustics in terms of weaponry and all kinds of technology for a long time. Dr. Karlstrom would know about that more than the rest of us because of his ferocity of research. But he rattled off a number of different things that the military-industrial complex is not only in, it is literally creating to use against you and I. He also mentioned dissidents, and I would suggest that most of you listening are probable candidates for that class of people, dissidents. We don't agree with what's going on. We don't agree with globalism. We don't agree with the New World Order. That makes us the enemy, their enemy. And they have so many weapons to use against us. Gang stalking is one of the preeminent ones, and it is really ugly. Go ahead, Eric.
Well, you have a very good grasp of it, Jeff. So we can try to educate ourselves and each other about this. I never got a letter, from the Department of Defense saying, well, now you're on the terrorism watch list. And there's some 2 million that are, and unfortunately this is all classified, and you can't find out if you're on that list. If you are put there on the list, perhaps by the terrorism liaison officer that is with your local police department, or with the fusion liaison officer with your state's fusion center, and you're deemed a potential terrorist threat or something like that, then they can say, okay, well, we're not sure, this guy's or this woman has not committed any crimes, but there's a potential that maybe they could in the future, so we're going to put them on the list for surveillance. Well, if you're on the list for surveillance, there's a presidential directive that says, oh, by the way, we can use you to test all kinds of weaponry, these electronic weapons, for instance. Now,
please, ladies and gentlemen, hold on, Eric. I want you to hear what he just said and let it settle in. If you are on a list, simply being named to a list, rightly or wrongly, you, by law, by code, UCC, you can be tested with any technology that they want to use on you. You have no rights. You're gone. You might as well be in the military and have signed away your rights. You're gone. Now, there's another list that we didn't mention, and we probably wouldn't have, but I want to mention it. It's that list that was put out by Islamic terrorists in England of over 8,600 people who have been marked for death. That list was allegedly confiscated by the FBI, among others, and it was never published. I've looked and looked for it. I wanted to see who the 8,600 people were that the so-called Muslim terrorists want to exterminate. That's another list. But my God, there are lists everywhere. And if you're on a list, you have less than no rights. You're toast. Go ahead.
Well, you're absolutely right. And the Magna Carta, back in back in the 1000s in Britain said, you have a right to face your accuser and find out what you're being accused of. Well, with the laws that have been passed in the last 10 or 20 years in the United States, though that basic principle has been, abdicated, you don't any longer have that right. So you don't know why you're on the list. You have no way to defend yourself with these little committees that are at the fusion centers, that would probably and the article that I wrote for estimates of the size, scope, structure, costs, and personnel requirements of Gog's new Gestapo puts forth some scenarios, and nobody has emailed me and said, okay, this is how the program works. But I've read a lot of books, including, for instance, Mark Emmerich's book, New World War, Revolutionary Methods for Political Control, and also Marshall Thomas's book, A Monarch, the New Phoenix Program. What we're dealing with is a globalized Phoenix program. For some of the people in your listening audience who don't remember that or never heard of it, during the Vietnam War, the CIA created this program because they wanted to target civilians in Vietnam who were supporting the Viet Cong resistance, and so they developed this program. They developed the lists, and they would give these lists of people that they thought were perhaps influential in Vietnam, and they would give this to the Department of Defense, and then the Department of Defense, the Army, go out and kill these people. And most people perhaps would remember the My Lai massacre with Lieutenant Cowley, and they killed 215 women and children in this peasant village. Well, that was the tip of the iceberg of that, because they killed, probably upwards of 50 or 60,000 civilians in Vietnam in the late 60s, early 70s in this Phoenix program. Well, we have a guy, I think his name is McKittrick, terrorism officer in the Bush administration in 2003 or whatever, saying we need a global Phoenix program. Well, guess what? We have now a global Phoenix program. We call it GangStalking. I now call it Gog's new Gestapo. But this is, I think, what is going on. I don't have any insider information. If you really want an expert, call somebody in the CIA. These are the guys who are doing this. Call somebody at the DHS, Department of Homeland Security.
If we can, Eric, let us just define the term, and it's a tough one because it has so many tentacles. Gang-stalking. Now, that conjures up to our listeners who haven't any familiarity with it, the idea of a gang walking after you down the street or casing your home, watching you, observing you. And that's really not terribly far off the mark here. But what these gang-stalking people do is attempt to psychologically destroy people with all kinds of tricks and technology. Go ahead.
Right. It's, I've kind of narrowed it down in my writings on my website and in some of the interviews that I've done recently. All of these programs seem to have some themes. And one major theme is it's carried out by the interagency. It's not just the military. It's not just military and intelligence. It's, there's a corporate sector. It's civilians are involved in this irregular warfare. They're used as irregular forces in this war. Local businesses, all these things can be drafted into service.
Exactly.
And it is a program that is like a McDonald's franchise. You can send it off, and another country or even a corporation could share resources and technology. Okay, so it's carried out by the interagency. That kind of diffuses the blame, and it makes it all the more effective. Second one, they use psyops, and this is where the street theater, the psy attacks. They will actually have teams of psychologists go ahead and do a profile of the targeted individual and figure out how to destroy that person psychologically. They separate them from their support system, from their friends and family, and get the family and friends to, turn against them, again with more psyops. And so this is another phase, the psyops, and there's a long research on psyops. It goes back to the Tavistock Institute and the CIA.
Eric, would you give us an example or two of some of these psychological operations that are waged against people?
Oh, well, see.
Now they can do anything. I mean, all right, let me add a little to that. When you said that local businesses, local citizens can be enlisted to help gang stalk a targeted individual, a TI, you were understating it if you weren't intentionally trying to, but it's worse than that. dozens and dozens of people in your community, if you happen to be a TI, a targeted individual, can be enlisted to wage all manner of psychological ops and warfare against you, your family, your life, your job, whatever it may be. And these people, in many cases, actually are tricked into thinking that they're helping the government and the country against subversives. Now, that's not all of them, but that's part of the technique of pulling these people in. It's an irregular army of gang stalkers who are enlisted and then drafted and then given a TI to go after.
Yes, exactly. Now the enemy is, amongst us. Now, we still have an enemy, but we've redefined it. Now it's individuals and groups who, are potential terrorist threats or non-combatants or subversives or, adversaries or enemies or whatever you want to call them. So you get these kind of good doers, good deed doers, that, pretty naive, maybe ex-cops. Maybe ex-firefighters, maybe cops, maybe firefighters, maybe ex-military, maybe military, maybe neighborhood watch people. You
That's
get
right.
all, maybe local businesses, and you part of this whole process is they have teams that go out and they spread false rumors. Okay, this such and such a person is a psychopath, or a pedophile or a prostitute or something like that, and then they get this person to be kind of or maybe a white supremacist or something like that, as I know I have been called. So they get the community, thinking you're the enemy, and then some of these people are paid part-time.
That's right. They are paid, yeah.
Because they're volunteering and think they're doing good work.
Mm-hmm.
This is actually in military doctrine. And, the Council on Foreign Relations article back in 1975 by Samuel P. Huntington said, we need civil military operations. Well, this is exactly what the East German Stasi police was all about, when they had 1 in 6 East German civilians helping the security forces to go after subversives.
Isn't that incredible? That is just incredible. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's the same thing with the communist Cheka of Soviet Union. So these programs are characteristic of authoritarian, totalitarian states. Whether communist or fascist doesn't matter. It's totalitarian. Yeah.
Now, let me add one little thing here. We have a little bit of a delay too for you listening, just under about a 2-second delay. If you happen to know anybody in your community that all of a sudden you begin to hear rumors about, let's say you're socially active, socially mobile, and you hear about Fred Smith, and Fred Smith is rumored to be a closet pedophile or a thief or an embezzler or something. These are the kinds of, some of the kinds of things that gang stalkers will do to people. And in many cases, not only are they paid, but they, in their own minds, think that they're answering a higher calling. They're doing it for the good of the country and the government. And Fred Smith is a bad guy. Well, why is Fred Smith a bad guy? Because somebody told them he is, and they're going to pay him to help them go after Fred Smith. And so the gang stalker takes his $100 a day or whatever it is, happy to help. He spreads rumors. He'll do anything. And they follow these people. They literally stalk them up and down the streets. They watch when they leave their homes. They like to go after neighbors of victims, of TIs, so they'll know exactly where they are. It is really insidiously evil and ugly, and most Americans wouldn't believe it. But we're here to tell you it's more than real. Go ahead, Eric. Thanks.
Yeah, well, it is more than real. I think if you look at it, the national security complex is one of the growth sectors in the American economy. We've outsourced, industry and manufacturing, and agriculture is suffering. And so, how are we going to keep this country afloat? Well, there's an enormous amount of money going into this. This seems to be a bottomless pit. There's money for this. And, when you think about it from the point of view of the elite New World Order people, they don't want dissent. They want to be able to control the society. They want to make sure that, bad apples, as in people who tell the truth, are neutralized, disposed of quietly.
Tainted, smeared, otherwise disabled. Yeah.
Exactly, disabled. So here we have a program that will do that, and it has built on many, many previous precursors, like the FBI's COINTELPRO, the 50s and 60s and 70s did pretty much this, and the CIA's MK Ultra mind control experiments. A lot of that technology was developed back in the 50s and 60s and 70s, and is being used now on these victims. We're talking the voice to skull and the dreams and voices that go right into the skull and the technology for
that's old technology, ladies and gentlemen. They've been able to put voices and sounds into your brain at distance for decades.
Right. This goes back to the 60s, and there's patents for these things, and, we can read about that, and I've got a lot of this stuff on my website, and of course the program is designed to make the person who's being targeted, if they complain about this, hundreds of people are following me. Well, the cop is, or the psychology person at the hospital is going to say, well, you're delusional, so you have delusional disorder, you have schizophrenia. Interestingly enough, Jeff, if you go back to the 40s and 50s, the Macy conferences under Gregory Bateson, who was a British guy, MI6, also worked with the CIA. It was all about what they call them the mind machine conferences, but it was all about Gregory Bateson and his wife Margaret Mead, the anthropologist, wanted to learn how to simulate the symptoms of schizophrenia. They wanted to learn how to make this thing called a double bind. So this is all like mind control type stuff. And then the psychological profession with their diagnostic manual is right there to put you in an institution. So they're essentially very much part of this system.
Oh, yeah. Not only will they put you in an institution, but they'll begin by medicating you. And once you become under their control, their aegis of medication, you're toast. You're done. You're not going to get away from that easily.
So what they want is a bunch of docile, compliant New World Order slaves. And for those who are not docile, compliant New World Order slaves, we have a remedy for you. And this is a big part of it. So what I'm suggesting is that gang stalking is very much a misnomer. It's very misleading. This is fourth generation warfare. Right. This is unconventional warfare against the civilian population.
Against us, folks.
Against the people.
Yes.
Against the people.
Eric, hold on a minute. I have to pause here. Hold that thought, if you would. We'll come right back and pick it up there. Talking with Dr. Eric Karlstrom, just a brilliant mind, and now focused on this utterly dark, black, evil hole called gang stalking, but it's much more than that now. And we could even bring in synthetic DNA, which is, I think, the ultimate solution to total control. That's to rewire people or reconfigure their DNA with synthetic DNA. That is now on the table as well. Be right back. Hold on. Okay, welcome back. And talking with Dr. Eric Karlstrom, PhD, Professor Emeritus, about gang stalking and all kinds of things. It's really an extraordinary term for a huge basket full of technologies and techniques. Let me read just a little bit, if I may, Eric, quickly from the, believe it or not, the New York Times, which starts out to tell a story reasonably, and then, of course, dissolves into complete rejection of what they're allegedly reporting on. Here's just a little bit for you. Nobody believed him. His family told him to get help. But Timothy Trespass, an out-of-work recording engineer in his early 40s, was sure he was being stalked, and not just by one person, but dozens of them. He would see the operatives, he said, disguised as ordinary people, lurking around his midtown Manhattan neighborhood. Sometimes they bumped into him and whispered nonsense into his ear, he said. "Now you see how it works?" they would sometimes say to him. At first, Mr. Trespass wondered if it was all in his head. Then he encountered a large community of like-minded people on the Internet who called themselves targeted individuals, or TIs, who described going through precisely the same thing. The group was organized around the conviction that its members are victims of a sprawling conspiracy to harass thousands of everyday Americans with mind control weapons and armies of so-called gang stalkers. The goal, as one gang stalking website put it, is, quote, to destroy every aspect of a targeted individual's life. And then the New York Times goes on to say, a growing tribe of troubled minds. Mental health professionals say the narrative has taken hold among a group of people experiencing psychotic symptoms that have troubled the human mind since time immemorial. And it goes on downhill from there. But the opening was accurate, and that does tragically apply to God only knows how many people in this country who they're on a list, they have no rights, they're being targeted, and all kinds of technology is used against them.
Yeah, and in my article that I just posted, 4 estimates of the size, scope, structure, costs, and personnel requirements of Gog's new Gestapo, I estimate that maybe 1 in 1,000 is being targeted.
That many?
Well,
wow.
that's just, I'm throwing it out there. I've heard other people throw out numbers like that. 2 million on the terrorist watch list in America, and maybe 2 or 3 million being targeted. Again, many to be taken down, many to be objects of experimentation for these new weapon systems.
Families destroyed, individuals' lives destroyed, jobs destroyed. We have no rights, and those who are prosecuting this hideous attack have no conscience whatsoever. They are psychopaths.
Well, yeah, and not to mention that this is treason against the U.S. Constitution and the American people. So let's bring that out. I mean, these people most of these people presumably have taken an oath of office, in politics and in the military to defend the Constitution, and they have shredded it, and they are shredding it by the moment. So this is, I think, what we have to keep our minds on, is that, gang stalking is illegal, it's immoral, it's unconstitutional, it is a criminal felony in every state, and yet this is a massive global program. So we're dealing with a criminal syndicate here. You can call them by lots of names. Yeah,
let me add one other thing, Eric, if I can. The idea of shootings, mass shootings and so forth, perpetrated by otherwise normal profiled people. They're just normal people. And they often say they have no memory of what they just did. They don't know what caused it. Here's 2 quick headlines. Gunman at Florida State spoke of being watched all the time. Gunman said electronic brain attacks drove him to violence, FBI says. See, these are the kinds of results of this issue that we're discussing.
Yes. Yeah, it doesn't take too long to start to realize that the terrorist and the terrorist groups are the CIA and the U.S. government, and that terrorism, we have 1 in 20 million chance of being killed by a terrorist attack, statistically, which is the same as being killed by your TV set. Terrorism, in fact, is use of violence to obtain a political objective, and the Department of Defense has a statement in one of their documents that says, terrorism is against international law, and it's official policy that we don't condone or use it. However, our enemies do use it, so therefore we use it. So we have this double speak right there, right in 2 sentences. So in fact, all these false flag terror attacks, including 9/11, are orchestrated by CIA, Mossad, etc., in order, again, to realize political objectives. And if you keep the population in fear and in ignorance, which is what they've managed to do, then they can get away with prosecuting all these wars in the Middle East, which have cost trillions of dollars, and also building up this global police state, which they've invested trillions of dollars in. So, it's all been very scripted by the Project for a New American Century documents, that think tank that gave the Bush administration their marching orders. So it's really not that hard to figure out who's behind this. And another post I have is, who and what are behind the New World Order's lies, terrorism, wars, and global organized stalking operations, a.k.a. Gog's Gestapo, or global organized gang stalking, blah, blah, blah. Uh-huh. So, the dots are all there to be connected. The information's there. But the same people that are doing this basically, own the media and run the country. So, American people are going to just have to, step up. And say, listen, this is our country, and you're committing treason, and you're not sanctioned, authorized to kill fellow Americans just because they're exercising their First Amendment rights of freedom of speech, for instance. That's what we have here.
And the headlines go on and on and on. Here's another newspaper headline: United States of Paranoia. They see gangs of stalkers. You see how easy it is to really just completely disable this subject in the media. When you own the media, you own the mass mind of the public. The gang stalking thing is getting worse. I mentioned synthetic DNA. They now have the ability, and you probably have run across this already, to use viruses to put into the human body with vaccines, for example. The viruses then, of course, find the nearest cell to invade, and they get into that cell. But what that virus is carrying with it is new structured synthetic DNA, which has an ability to take its place on the chromosome and either kick another one out, another piece of DNA, or just basically crowd in there. And once it's in there, it begins to reconfigure immediately the individual. They can do anything to people. They say that they're using this now to create antibodies in people for a specific virus or a bacteria or whatever. But in point of fact, if they can cause the body with synthetic DNA to create antibodies, they can cause the body to do anything. They can cause the body to all of a sudden hate sports, beat their wives, pretend they're a Muslim, or whatever. The endless possibilities boggle the mind. Synthetic DNA, nanotech is the new frontier, and it's no longer a frontier. I think it's hometown stuff to a lot of these people now.
Yeah. Well, yeah, let me just, Jeff, if you don't mind, I'll just finish those characteristics of gang stalking that I've put together. Yeah, the interagency aspect, so, that diffuses the blame and really gets the whole society kind of mobilized to remove these cancerous cells of whatever, dissidents, truth tellers, whatever. And then the PSYOP aspect, which is a huge topic in and of itself. And it itself has been called a non-lethal weapon, NLW. And then also the use of electronic warfare, the directed energy weapons that I mentioned. And, again, this is the patents are all there over the last 60 years. Microwaves, radio frequencies, extremely low frequencies, millimeter wave, laser, acoustic weapons. All of these, they have, weaponized the electromagnetic spectrum and learned how to use it to turn up the power aspects, and again, they're testing these on human subjects, non-consensual human subjects. And I get email from TIs, that are just going through hell. At least this is what they tell me, in terms of the pain that they experience, and I noticed in my experience, they love to go after blacks and people of color. They seem to be the preferred test subjects, but other groups as well. And then the last aspect I would say, at least in this short summary, is there seems to be a satanic component to this, and I don't know. I think they probably, they have these mercenary stalking cells that are mobilized with their, iPhone apps and their iPad apps. There's obviously a central control and command structure, and this is all brought out in Mark Rich's book, New World War. They have all of the branches of the military have now mobile war rooms that they call C4ISR, which stands for Command and Control, Communications, and Computer Intelligence, surveillance, reconnaissance. And with these can be mobile or stationary, or they can be virtual computer war rooms, in which now you have a commander who's got access to the location of the TIs, to the geographic information grid, which is based on satellite data. They can apparently pick out where people are, and then their geographic information systems technology gives them multiple maps so they can display this information in front of them, and then they can go ahead and mobilize the available surveillance role players, the people who are, the perps, and they can target the targets. Mm-hmm. So this is all very, very, very highly sophisticated stuff. It can be used in warfare, certainly in foreign countries. It can be used, but this is what it is. America itself is now the battle space and is defined as such in numerous laws and also in military documents. So, the U.S. Northcom was established right after 9/11. 9/11 is the pretext to bring a lot of this about. Uh-huh. And with the Patriot Act and Department of Homeland Security, all these came down right after 9/11. And were all set up beforehand, of course. And so with U.S. Northcom, the battlefield is North America now. And it's in the documents. So, it's just putting the puzzle pieces together to see that this gang-stalking thing is enormous, and of course it does not bode well for the people. No. unless we can somehow spread the word, and enough people can say, no, this is not how we want our tax dollars spent. This is not how we want our government to work.
Not how we want our lives to be spent either.
Absolutely. No. Yeah.
No, that's a terrific summary. I just wonder where this is all going to end. What do you see as when is enough for these people? Answer: never. What are they going to do eventually? Will they replace us with AI robots? What are they going to do?
Well, I just posted a 3-hour interview on my website with a guy named Brian Tu, who former Department of Defense worker who is a targeted individual. He calls them also mind control victims, not just TIs. And he was, a law student, and he has studied the scientific aspects of this with, Dr. Robert Duncan, who's ex-CIA guy who wrote Project Soul Catcher, et cetera. And he believes that the way this is set up, and I can't vouch for this because this is over my head. I haven't, verified it or not. He says that, this is being run by conscious supercomputers, or streams of energy is coming from conscious supercomputers. They are the targeted individual will be then connected with a university or research group hive mind team. Yeah. And these hive mind teams will be headed by a clone who's probably a psychologist or a cognitive research guy. Uh-huh. And there's a carrier frequency embedded in the electromagnetic radiation that's coming from the supercomputer to the mind, get this, of the TI. And the carrier frequency then is directly compatible with the EEG or electroencephalogram fingerprint of that person's brain. And this allows then the clone or the leader of the hive mind team to inject his thoughts directly into the mind of the TI. So this is how he says he thinks it works. And I can't say it does or it doesn't, but it does make sense. Uh-huh. And he's saying that what they want to do with this technology, they want to measure and map all responses of an individual to the incredible trauma that they're producing with all these setups. This is all very, very negative, hostile type stuff. And they, according to Brian too, they need this to get the information they want about the intellect, the will, and the emotions of the targeted individual, which then gets downloaded somehow on this supercomputer. And now, I guess that individual's soul could be captured. You could say the soul is the intellect, the will, and the emotions, and then put on a chip. And then once they get the bionics worked out, so that this they can live forever through a fake body, now they've got immortality. So you could say that's one speculation of how this the end result might be, that the breakaway civilization of the New World Order that wants to enslave the rest of us or kill us off, they intend to be immortal gods with this kind of, I guess some of us TI should feel complimented. Somebody wants our mind to live in forever and ever or something. I don't know.
They could also take that chip and once they've downloaded everything, augment it, tweak it, put it in anybody and turn them into you, for example. It could be a clone of, not a physical, but a mental clone of Dr. Eric Karlstrom. Now, you mentioned, not directly but indirectly, that you are a TI. Do we want to talk about that at all?
Well, yeah, just a little. It's,
and what brought you? First of all, what brought you to that conclusion that you might be part of this program?
Well, you start to see setups that are very strange, and people acting very strange, and really these people are acting. These psi actors.
They are.
They will actually take. They'll go to Actors Guilds and say, "Hey, we'll give you work." Go, and it's a little bit like the movie The Game. You ever saw The Game? Where you have these teams of actors who are, putting in this case, Michael Douglas, the hero, the protagonist, through, this hellish experience. They basically, in the story, they take a billionaire in San Francisco, and in a very short time, they deprive him of his home and his job and all his money and his house and everything. So this, and this happens after they do all these psychological tests on him. So it's worth seeing if you want to get a sense of it. The movie called The Game, and so yeah, these people are actors. They're acting, and when you start noticing that human behavior, the behavior of humans around you has shifted. I believe most people are good. You'll get a smile or something genuine. With these guys, they hardly ever look at you in the eye. They often sneer in a very foul way. So about 2013, I started realizing that, things had shifted a little bit in that regard, and I started, noticing. And then once I did some research, I realized that, probably I've been in the program for longer than just the last 3 or 4 years. If you go back to 2006 or so, I was hit by all kinds of really crazy symptoms at once that I checked myself into the emergency room thinking I was having a heart attack or a stroke. And, the 4 doctors checked me out, said my heart was fine, but maybe it was a trans-ischemic attack, but they didn't know what it was. Well, I think now it was probably ultrasound. I was violently nauseous, and the room was spinning at 1,000 miles per hour. And,
sure.
It was very strange.
They have beam weapons of many different stripes now that they can create.
These could be carried in a little mobile suitcase. These
could be in the car behind you. Could be in the half a block away. Could be the person standing next to you. That's exactly right.
Right. So yeah, I would say I've had enough experience with this to have a sense of it. I do get the sense by talking to other TIs that a lot of people have it a lot worse than me right now. But who knows exactly what the individual scripts are for us. But I do think that it's very important to expose this. I think that's really the only solution, Jeff.
This is rank, hideous evil. Is what it is, being perpetrated by people who really have no soul, in my view. I don't know how you could do this and call yourself a human being. Doesn't make any sense to me. None.
Well, I agree totally. It is extremely evil. I think most people don't, are off put. They don't have anything to compare this with.
That's right.
In 2012, I was working on a series of articles about my hometown, Crestone Baca, Colorado. It was called "Is Crestone Baca the Vatican City of the New World Order?" which is a whole nother show, Jeff. But I spent the year 2012 researching mind control, MK Ultra and related programs. And that article's on my websites, 911nwo.com and GangStalking mindcontrol.cults.com. And it was like going into the ninth circle of hell to realize what had been done back in the, this comes from the Nazi concentration camps. It was brought into America, the CIA by Project Paperclip, the Nazi scientists. And, it goes back to the Illuminati and the Egyptian Book of the Dead and how you split personalities into dissociative identity disorder and subalters and mental structures. And it's unimaginably evil that human beings would do this to their kids or to someone else's kids. But the fact is that people do this to their kids and other people's kids. And this then is this GangStalking is the modern application of what I researched in 2012. When I put it down in 2012, I really didn't know what was going on now. Now I know what's going on now. What's going on now is this Gog's new Gestapo, which uses all that MK Ultra mind control stuff. Yeah.
You know, this whole subject we barely touched upon, and I hope all of you listening. We're going to take a break here and come back another hour to go with Eric. But I hope all of you will go look at his videos, go to his websites. You can learn a lot. He has put himself on the line for all of us coming on this program tonight, talking about things that they don't want us to know about. They're doing it. Imagine if we all were living in an enormous Petri dish and some hideously ugly scientists were peering down at us, tweaking us genetically, tweaking our emotions, tweaking everything about us. That's really the case. That's what's happening to an awful lot of people in this country. We are living guinea pigs. Pretty damned ugly. Hold on, Eric. We'll come right back. Another hour to go. Okay, welcome back. Talking with Dr. Eric Karlstrom, PhD, Professor Emeritus. This is an opportunity for all of you, again, through the courtesy of Dr. Karlstrom this time, to walk through a door and look around and study things that ordinarily you probably would never get to. We've spent the last hour on a very important subject. We'll talk this hour of a couple of different things. Certainly, I think his climate change, it's naturalclimatechange.us, will get you there, which is full of articles and information regarding the relative importance of natural versus human-induced climate changes. That's one. We'll talk about 9/11 as well. After you, sir. Where would you like to go first?
Well, I think that I didn't realize it at the time when I started the 911nwo.com site and the naturalclimatechange.us sites, that these were, as an academic, what you do as a scientist is, you take a hypothesis and then you prove it or disprove it. I mean, this is, how you advance knowledge.
Yeah.
That's the idea. I mean, that's what I thought academics was for. I thought we were seeking truth, but obviously that there's other opinions about that.
Indeed.
So, I just figured as an American, these are big issues that need to be examined and cross-examined. And actually, it doesn't take very long to look at either of these to see that they are foundational lies, as I said earlier, in the New World Order game plan. I didn't realize that when I started these sites, but it has become increasingly clear. Now, the 9/11, of course, is one of many in a series of state-sponsored false flag, synthetic terror events. And if we look a little deeply, we see that the same very characteristics that characterize, say, GangStalking, or what I'm calling Gog's new Gestapo, that is to say the interagency, the PSYOP, the directed energy weapons, and the Satanist aspect, these are very characteristics of what I'm calling Operation 9/11. And I can go through that and talk about each one of those, but and maybe that's a good place to start since we are on this topic.
Sure,
and this is a break.
sure. I think one thing that just I want to underscore by way of a very brief, tiny preface is that the word Satanism applies here. It's involved with all of it. It's all there somewhere.
Right. Absolutely. And I think even if we just go through this exercise briefly, we'll see that the same pattern is established in Operation 9/11, as well as even the Kennedy assassination. We can go through that too. These are kind of the fingerprints of the New World Order, invisible government, whatever you want to call it. I call them Zion-Nazis. But
that works perfectly. Yeah.
I call them Judeo-Masonic Satanists.
It's even better.
There's so much evidence for that. But let's go through these characteristics. First, the interagency. Now, of course, the myth, the official story is that, Osama bin Laden, ex-CIA operative whose name was Tim Osmond when he worked for the CIA, and, 19 Saudi goat herders somehow fooled the greatest military and intelligence system in the history of the world, with box cutters and things like that. Well, of course, this is so preposterous; it's an insult to our intelligence. And in 2002, I wrote an article that got on the internet. It was called "Reflections on the Origins of 9/11: 3 Scenarios," and that could have marked me, Jeff, for being a TI, because it got around the world. And in 60 pages, basically, I demolished the government cover story, which itself, of course, is a conspiracy theory. It's an outrageous conspiracy theory. There's no truth to it.
Indeed.
But in fact, it's an insulting conspiracy theory. But if we look deeper, and of course, there's been a 9/11 truth movement that's had lots of problems, but also produced lots of good results since then. And Webster Tarpley has a 5th edition of his book, 9/11 Synthetic Terror Made in the USA, in which he documents from newspaper articles that there were 55 drills going on the day of 9/11 and leading up to it in the 2 years prior, that involved all kinds of agencies, like the U.S. Air Force was a main lead agency, UN, NORAD, the New York Fire Department, New York Police Department, and he names these 55 agencies. Okay, all of them are doing drills that mimic every aspect of the Operation 9/11, and then on the day of the event, of course, these drills flipped live. And this is how they do it. This is how they did it with the 7/7 bombing in London. Yeah. And so this is an example of the interagency. Who did it? Who's guilty? Well, all of these agencies now, speaking of Satanism, I've read enough about it to know that if they're killing, say, a Satanist, they'll get in their little covenant circle and everybody will stab him with a knife. Well, who killed him? Everybody killed him, so everybody's guilty, nobody's guilty. It's like that with these operations. You have the interagency, it diffuses the blame. And okay, so then the second aspect, trauma-based mind control, the whole thing was based on Tavistock principles of applying trauma-based mind control to the masses. So now we're going to watch those buildings come down over and over again, and the goal then is to get the American public and the world's population to be so traumatized that they dissociate. And they briefly, kind of lose their ability to think and reason. And then quickly the authority figure, in this case George W. Bush, comes along and says, that's all right, kids, everything's going to be fine. Go back shopping, please, And that's exactly how trauma-based mind control works. And so this was all, just like the Kennedy thing, it's all based on Tavistock principles of applying the principles of trauma-based mind control to the masses. Okay, so that's number 2, the PSYOP aspect. And number 3, the directed energy weapons. Well, Dr. Judy Wood came along in about 2006 and 7 and kind of blew the whole 911 movement in a new direction when she as a lady with a PhD in materials engineering and physics interferometry, which is how wavelengths of energy interfere with each other. And she analyzed over 10,000 high-quality photos from all angles of, ground zero. And she came up with the explanation that, okay, a new form of weaponry was used. Well, here we are, the revolution in military affairs, the Tesla technology. And, so she kind of showed that it wasn't so much a new Pearl Harbor, which the PNAC documents actually called for. It was a new Hiroshima in the sense that a new weapon system was demonstrated to the world. And, of course, intelligence agencies around the world would have noticed this, and it would have been a warning to all other nations, hey, look what we got. We can take anything down anytime, anywhere with this new technology, this Tesla technology, these directed energy weapons. And so I think that this is, there's been a lot of debate about whether mini nukes were used or whether it was, in the building bombs, and nanothermite and all this stuff. And that actually stalled out the 911 truth movement for about 5 years, people calling each other names and stuff. But basically it could be all of those, again, because Pentagon is 50 years, 80 years ahead of us. But I think directed energy weapons were used.
Well, what was Eric, which building was left essentially standing? But and Judy was on the program a couple times. Her book is remarkable to go through. And it had an enormous hole right down through the top of it. And yet the outer perimeter of the building was still standing. I forget the number of it. You know what I mean.
Yeah, I think it's Building 6, but I'm not sure about that.
Yeah.
I know the photos you're talking about. I've got them on my 911nwo.com .com website.
Yeah.
And, it looks like, a laser came down from space.
It looks exactly like that. Yeah.
Yeah, in a big round circle. And so now you've got 8 stories of a sheer, almost a sheer cliff cutting down through 8 stories of building. It's a most remarkable thing. Now, Tesla, was a genius from Serbia who lived and invented, he invented alternating current, AC electricity. He invented wireless. He invented
radio, of course, wireless.
Radio, exactly. Marconi got the patent, but it was proven later that Tesla did the work. So anyway, he was a profound genius who wanted to use this energy, basically free energy, to help mankind. And they actually put up a Wardenclyffe tower in Manhattan, of all places, around the time of World War I. And they had built the thing, and his backer was J.P. Morgan, who was known as being the richest American, in the country at that time, buying all this war materials. And but then J.P. Morgan pulled the funding and said, "Hey, if it's free, where can I meter it? I don't want free energy." They dismantled it. And but anyway, Tesla had invented what he called the death ray back in early 1900s, and he described it as able to basically disintegrate an airplane engine from 250 miles away, amongst other things. And so I think it's some version of that. And of course, when he died, he was probably killed during World War II. The night before, he intended to talk to FDR, the president, and try to get him to use these weapons to finish the war. He died very suddenly, and then of course the intelligence agents went to his apartment and
they vacuumed that hotel room out. They took all of his papers.
Yeah, and since then they've been weaponizing Tesla technology. That's the short story.
Right.
And now we call it directed energy weapons or electronic weapons. But they've been testing these. So this, and if you go back to the Kennedy assassination, there's a book that's come out, Were We Controlled? By Lincoln Lawrence. It came out in '67, shortly after the assassination. And he has an hypothesis that what was used there was RHIC EDIM, or radio hypnotic intracerebral control electronic dissolution of memory, which the CIA had already developed and perfected in 1963. Wow. So they would be able to then hypnotize somebody from a distance with radio frequencies so that they would perform an act, and then they would erase that memory with the EDIM, the electronic dissolution of memory. So this technology has been around since the Kennedy assassination. And then if we go to the very last of these 4, the Satanism aspect, there's a book that's by J.K. Bain called The Most Dangerous Book in the World, 9/11 as Mass Ritual. And he talks about all the, Masonic symbology that's used in the numerology and everything. It's a long book, and I've read it. And I've got a couple articles about that on my website. And then there's the images of Satan's face in the smoke, in the towers and all this stuff. Was that Photoshopped? Was that not Photoshopped? All this stuff. But there's a lot of satanic imagery that's available on this.
You think Eric, you think the door is still open on that image, that it might have been a legit photo?
Yeah, the jury's out on that, I
it's
think
still, yeah.
Well, you've interviewed Tex Mars, and I think we're fans of Tex. And he came out, very shortly after 9/11 saying this is a satanic ritual and a Masonic satanic ritual. And I've got that CD, that Power of Prophecy program, and he really nailed it from a, spiritual, satanic, biblical side. Is remarkable to me, But then he'd been studying all this, and he's very well versed in that.
He is.
And of course, I never even thought this was remotely possible until a couple of years ago. But anyway, so it seems like the satanic aspect is part of this. It's like a fingerprint of these kinds of operations. This is who we're dealing with. We're dealing with the Judeo-Masonic Satanists who rule, the world through finance and secret societies, basically.
Right. I like that term. Judeo-Satanic
Yeah, Judeo-Masonic, Satanic, and of course Masons is a Gentile front.
The Masons are always in there, and it's another label that people don't understand, but Judeo-Masonic Satanists.
Yeah, it's based on the Jewish Kabbalah, which is the Babylonian system of black magic.
I have the quote from. Did you see the Trump quote about him studying the Kabbalah?
Oh, great. No.
Oh yeah, I'll see if I can find it.
Well, that does not bode well for us.
No,
the Kabbalah is it's satanic black magic is what it is.
Exactly. Let's see if I can find it. Somebody sent it to me yesterday. It was in a book, and hold on just a sec. I can pull it up here real quick. Kaballh. Let's see if it comes up. No, it doesn't come up, of course. I'll find it. Go ahead.
Yes, so these four aspects are in 9/11, and this is then one of a whole series of false flag attacks. Now, again, it doesn't take a genius to see that this is all prescripted and planned for George W. Bush, who, the election was stolen for him in 2000 by the same group.
Right.
This is brought out by Barbara Honegger in some of her talks. She's really looked at the Pentagon aspect of this, and she's saying that basically this group, this PNAC group, which is crypto-Jewish in the sense that most of the people are secret Jews but don't really admit to that, but a lot of dual Israeli-American citizens, they wrote a script. Basically, they have their manifesto, which is called Rebuilding America's Defenses, saying that, $300 billion a year is not enough. We've got to get that figure to be doubled, within a couple years. And the only way to do that, the only way the American people will do that is if there's a new Pearl Harbor. So, of course, and then they went ahead and wrote the script for all these wars in the Middle East, which benefit Israel and the creation of Greater Israel, Eretz Israel, which is what David Ben-Gurion and the leaders of Israel have wanted, and the Rothschilds, since Israel was created in 1948. So what they want, and this is right in the flag of Israel, with the two blue stripes, that's supposed to represent the Nile and the Tigris Euphrates as bounding the expanded borders of Greater Israel.
Now you remember JFK and his war with Ben-Gurion demanding that there be international inspections of Dimona. JFK knew there was going to be a Jewish bomb. He knew that was their number one priority. And what do we find out in 1967 now, just 3 years or so after JFK was murdered, the Jewish state admits they were going to use a nuclear bomb in the 67 war. So JFK was right. Again.
Yeah, it seems like it on many counts,
Yeah.
And, I was there. I was 14 in the D.C. area at the time. I grew up in the D.C. area, and I went to his funeral. It was a very, very, very sad moment in American history. It was like hope was killed, because he was a very vigorous and intelligent. I mean, we haven't had a president like that who could quote Shakespeare, since his death, and the country's. You could look at that as an overthrow or a coup by this group, and I think 9/11 is another coup. So what we're looking at is a series of overthrows by this group. Certainly the 1913 Federal Reserve Act, which gives the power to coin the money to this cartel of Jewish financiers.
Absolutely, insanely unconstitutional, and you got it.
Yeah, and then in 1947 National Security Act gave this cabal their own private army when the CIA was founded. And the CIA has worked to serve that interest, not the American people. I've done a big, long article about the life of Allen Dulles from 50 different sources, which I guess you'd say are alternative sources. And if you look at he was the first director of the CIA. He started his career about the end of World War I when he was in the small elite group that actually created the Council on Foreign Relations as an American offshoot of the British Roundtable groups, the Royal Institute of International Affairs. And he was the guy he and his brother John Foster Dulles, who was Secretary of State under under Eisenhower. What a cabal that was. They met with Hitler in the 30s and got Hitler to guarantee that he would repay the Wall Street loans. And World War II was on. So, and this is one of the greatest acts of treason in American history. And then towards the end of his career, of course, after Kennedy fired him after the aborted Bay of Pigs invasion in Cuba, it's believed now by many scholars that Dulles was the CEO of the Kennedy assassination. Yeah. So what a career! Over 50 years of serving the Illuminati elite at the expense of the American people. And, of course, he loved all these covert ops that were going on all over the world under Eisenhower. And when Kennedy came in, there were still covert ops going on that Kennedy was not even informed of. The assassination of Lumumba in the Congo, et cetera. Mm-hmm. The CIA was just they're just taking down leaders all over the world, assassinations, coups, et cetera. So, a lot of this stuff is not new. If you look at history, you see, if you look at real history instead of rewritten history, you see that, this has a lot of legs. There's a lot of background to where we are right now.
Really well said. Let's talk about Paris and the Climate Accord and the big flap about that. What's your view on it?
Well, I got my PhD in 1981, University of Calgary. I was studying physical geography, which is, in my case, I was studying the glacial history of Glacier Park and Waterton Park on the border with Canada and the U.S. Mm-hmm. And, of course, you start to get into, and that's coming out of earth science, but really the study of geomorphology, which is my specialty, gets into the study of climate change because, what is causing the landforms? Well, the glaciers are coming and going, the rivers are, shifting and rising and falling and stuff. So one aspect of geomorphology is to look at the climatic signal that is recorded in the landforms, and I was always interested in that. And so you want to date the landforms and the soils and then reconstruct the past environment. And this is, I go into this on my website a lot. And so what we see is a 4.5 billion year Earth history in which most of the time, maybe 80% of the Earth's history, climate was significantly warmer than today, maybe 8 to 10 degrees centigrade, no ice on the poles. And in fact, that is much more beneficial climate for most kinds of life. You get better plant growth, you get longer growing seasons, animals get bigger. That's why the dinosaurs were so big, and that's why we had this gigantism of species in the middle of the tertiary about 30, 40, 50 million years ago. The animals got huge because the climate was so nice. So basically warmth is better than cold for plants and animals. So, there's so many lies embedded in this idea that, first of all, carbon dioxide, which we're now told is, a pollutant, is one of the miracle gases that creates life through photosynthesis.
We're supposed to think it's a deadly toxin. Yeah, it's
carbon monoxide. Yes, that is deadly toxin. But carbon dioxide is a miracle gas. It allows photosynthesis, and it's the basis of life. So a little more CO2 is only going to make life a little more green.
A little more
on
verdant.
The planet.
Yeah, a little greener, a little nicer.
Yeah, so that's one of the big lies embedded is that, and the other one, of course, is that CO2, which is this tiny trace gas, 4 in 10,000 molecules of CO2, and if we increase that, by 25-50%, that's going to change things. No, it's not. It's such a bit player that it has no effect on the temperature. And so this is another lie that's been put forth. You see the X and the Y axis, CO2 is going up, they say, therefore temperature is going to go up with it. But in fact, if you take measurements of CO2 all around the world, there is no clear signal of whether it's going up or down. And if you take measurements of temperature all over the world, you see no clear signal either. In fact, there's been very slight cooling since a high in 1998. And we know this from 3,000 buoys in the ocean, the Argos system, which, go down 100 meters and then send the temperature up to satellites. A very, 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 very slight cooling. we've seen cooling in the Antarctic ice sheet, since before 1998, over the last 40 years. So what we have is a pack of lies. Science has been commandeered, unfortunately, by politics and money, and those scientists who spew out the right conclusions then are favored.
Oh yeah,
and,
sure.
they get their people in, the editorship of the various journals like Nature and whatnot.
Sure. They get published and they get their grants, and that's it. Hold on a minute. We have to pause again here. We'll come right back with Eric in just a few, so stay right there. Okay, and we're back with Dr. Eric Karlstrom, PhD, Professor Emeritus. Tavistock, one of those legendary terms that we throw around here. Is Tavistock still active, Eric? And where does it fit in this grand plan of technology being used to destroy humanity? I haven't heard much directly about Tavistock in years. It seems like it almost went out of business, although it's supposedly still there.
Well, you know where the 7/7 London bombing occurred?
Right outside.
Right there in Tavistock.
Yeah.
Well, Tavistock started right at World War I. Sir John Rawlings Rees was Brigadier General of the British Psychological Warfare Division. He brought on Sigmund Freud. They started studying shell-shocked soldiers from World War I. Now we would call it post-traumatic stress syndrome, not to heal them, but to figure out, what it was that caused them to become, shell-shocked. And then they, again, wanted to figure out how they could apply these kinds of traumas to the mass mind, such as they have done with the Kennedy assassination and the 9/11, et cetera, and 7/7. And, back in the 30s, guys like Kurt Lewin, who's kind of one of the associated with the Frankfurt School a Jew out of Germany. So much of this is Jews coming out of Germany. He would be briefly to England and then came to the United States and, was involved with lots of Tavistock spin-offs here, one of which is the Stanford Research Institute. And, there's several books that are written about Tavistock, an excellent one by Dr. John Coleman, who was a PhD political science and also MI6, which is, the British Secret Service.
John was a good friend of mine. He's in his 90s now. He was on the program here many, many times. And
very impressive guy, and very impressive book. And it traces all the threads from Tavistock into this country with all the different institutions, like MIT. And so, whether or not it kind of doesn't matter what's going on at Tavistock, because
it's got lots of progeny out there. I also did a lot with SRI 20 years ago, and there was one of the top people there who was actually talking, and I used to have him on as a guest frequently, and he revealed some amazing things. And then I had Ingo Swann on, and there's another jewel that we all miss. I mean, he was what a mind he had.
Yeah, that's great that you have that background to bear, because all of these threads come together.
They do. They're all in the archives, too. I've got 24 years, Eric, of radio program archives, which basically tell, in an audio format, the whole decline and fall of America and the Western world. It's a remarkable thing. Those people are all in the archives. You can go listen to them anytime you want if you've got a simple little membership. And I knew in the beginning I was to somehow record and keep these programs, and I did. And I'm so grateful I did, because hearing those people talk about SRI, Stanford Research Institute, and so forth, you just can't get that today. It's very, very hard. I used to have a guy who would come on and talk about nanotechnology, and then he vanished. And I got back in touch with him finally after 8 or 9 months, and he just wouldn't talk about nanotech anymore. Obviously, what happened was he was told to shut up. And that's why you don't see nanotechnology in the media. It's not discussed. They're using constantly now nanotech things technologically. They're pushing always the envelope to develop more. As you say, 60 to 80 years ahead of us? Sure, I believe it. No problem.
Yeah, the nanotech, the smart dust, maybe one of the components that's coming from the aerial spraying that we call, chemtrails or whatever. And then it would be in all of our bodies. And according to at least this guy, Brian Tu, whose interview I mentioned earlier in our last interview, he believes that this smart dust can get in your body and then kind of coagulate somehow into some kind of a sensing device that they can track you with. So that well could be the case, and all of us, of course, are subject to this kind of smart dust, I guess.
I concur. I have no problem with that theory at all. None.
Yeah. Well, all of this stuff is very, very strange. It does look like the intention is to take humanity down or radically alter it.
Okay, let's. We got 10 minutes or so left. Let's step toward that final frontier. What are these people up to? What do they want to do? Do they want to, with synthetic DNA, restructure us and turn us into a servant class, eradicate 80 or 90% of the mass of the populace here as being absolutely useless eaters? Do they want to eventually replace us? Will we be replaced by AI? It certainly looks like there's nothing to stop it. There are some people now who are sounding the alarm, saying we've got to put blocks on this program, or it's going to run away. AI. So I mean, we've got all these future potentials, and where it's going to go, I don't know. I just wish that if there was some off-planet help, I wish it would get here, because I don't think we're going to self-regulate in any way, shape, or form for the betterment of the species of ours.
Yeah, you're really in a better position to answer that question than I am, I think, Jeff, with all the, perspectives that you have accumulated over the years. My own research suggests, and I listen a lot to Tex Mars of Power Prophecy.
Tex is great. He's on every month. He's a great man. Brilliant man.
He is a great man, and he's done a lot of research on the New Age cults. He's done a lot of research on the robotics. He's done a lot of research on Judaism, and his recent book, Holy Serpent of the Jews, the Rabbi's Plan.
Tremendous book. He has a new book about robotics as well. We did a couple programs on that. Stunning research.
Yeah. And your interview was great. I just listened to it last week.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, it was great. In fact, and you were right there with him on this stuff. Listening to Tex and whatnot, it's hard not to come back to this age-old conspiracy to establish a Jewish utopia, which the Jewish world universal empire, which has been in the works, since the Illuminati. In 1776, May 1st, Adam Weishaupt, the Rothschild family, established this plan to destroy governments, destroy the monarchy, destroy nations, destroy the family, destroy religions, destroy private property, so that there would be nothing standing in the way then of this, Jewish takeover, and then all the material wealth of the world would be in the hands of the Jews. There's so many statements, to that effect that it's kind of hard to ignore. Obviously, there's complexity added to the system, but it does seem like, then you go to Ray Kurzweil, and he's been around, another Jew, talking for, since the 60s about the singularity and how computers are going to take over. Right. And, in their, Kabbalah and Talmud, it says when our Messiah comes, every Jew will have 2,800 Gentile slaves. And, and then you go back to Deuteronomy, and God says, go into this, area, this nation, and those who will not serve you, kill them all, Obviously, they're serving this very, very nasty God that favors them, and everybody else is going to get.
That's for sure.
What's that?
It's not mine.
Yeah, obviously, and of course, Satan's text says it's Satan, and it does seem to make sense. So, evidently, there is, such an entity, and evidently, people get some short-term power from aligning themselves with that.
That's right.
And so it looks to me like a satanic kingdom is being built, the kingdom of the Antichrist.
It does look like that.
The biblical prophecy does seem to be valid. And so then the question is, well, what's our responsibility? And, my feeling is pretty much expressed by a short essay by, what's his name, Paul Craig Roberts. Truth is my country. Truth is my country. And I've heard, it's like, I want to be in a country where people tell the truth. We're in a country where it's, it's run by cover stories of intelligence agencies and Jewish fables like, man caused global warming and 9/11. We've got to come back and find the truth,
I really admire your intellectual strength and wisdom. You're just nailing it one after another after another. You're telling it straight, and I don't even use the word truth very often anymore, Eric. I use reality. Truth, I've got the truth. Everyone's got the truth, right? The truth. But it's so corrupted. And what is the truth anymore? And when we factor in all the technology with GangStalking and mind control, you go back to Delgado and what he did, and Tesla's death weapon, death beam. They are way ahead. They're so far ahead. The average human being, I don't think, would believe it. I just don't think they would if they knew, and they never will.
Well, it's very interesting. There's a book by Yuri Lina, a Swedish guy, called Under the Sign of the Scorpion, which is about, the Bolshevik Revolution, which, the Russian Revolution in 1917 was carried out, by this same cabal, the Judeo-Masonic Satanists.
Yep.
And then they put the country through hell for 70 years, in which they killed some 66 million white Christians, according to Alexander Solzhenitsyn, over time there. And, they established the Red Terror, the Cheka, which is doing a lot of the same things that the Department of Homeland Security is doing. So we're seeing a replay of that. And, those people at the time in Russia did not know that Lenin and Stalin and this group, the Bolsheviks, were Jewish. They didn't even know it. At least, some of us have gotten the word. Trying to
well,
spread
you
the
look
word.
And you study Kaganovich, and these people are not human. Sorry, doesn't work for me. Here's that piece on Trump. Let's see here. Okay. 4 people have given me sound nuggets of wisdom that have helped me keep my business in perspective. This is by the author here. I don't have time to dig through it and find him, but when I was 19, I complained to David Geffen about some other people in the entertainment business who were making a lot of money and who I didn't think deserved it. David turned to me and said, "You need to be a racehorse. Do you know what the racehorses do?" I answered, "They race." David replied, "No, they wear blinders. If they looked to the left or far right, they would lose. Don't look to the left, don't look to the right, wear blinders and race your own race." One day, when my Kabbalah teacher, Eitan Yardeni, asked how I was doing, I told him I needed a break. I was thoroughly exhausted, overwhelmed. This is supposedly Donald Trump talking, and overworked. Eitan then said, "Do you know what you should do now?" I thought he was going to encourage me to take some time off, but instead he replied, "No, go work harder. Be careful what you ask for because you may get it." Eitan was right. If I ask for a break, God may give me that break. And it goes on from there. But here he is again, one day when my Kabbalah teacher, Eitan Yardeni. So this is supposedly Trump talking about his Kabbalah studies. So wouldn't surprise me.
Well, yeah, it's not encouraging. The biblical story about Jesus 40 days in the desert and then confronting Satan, and Satan says, bow down and worship me, and I'll give you all the, kingdoms of the world. And of course, Jesus rejected that, but lots of people have accepted that. This tribe has, and lots of others as well. And this is what the Kabbalah is all about. You're aligning yourself with that dark force,
right?
Which many identify as Satan. And of course, that's a vast topic, and I am no expert on it, to be sure. I consult people like Tex Mars who've studied it, and I've gotten enough of a sense of it to know that that's kind of the central pillar. The Kabbalah is the central pillar, say, of Masonry. So, and it runs through many, many, many different cults. You'll find it in voodoo and cults. In Haiti, you'll find aspects of the Kabbalah, as well as the Santeria cults in South America. So it is a kind of a cult that binds. It's the darkest of black magics.
Let's Go ahead, finish up.
No, that's fine.
I was going to say, let's pay a little, tiny bit more tribute to Tex Mars. I would urge all of you to get hold of some of Tex's books and read them. They are that good and that important. He has really carved out a niche for himself in our day and age and our time on this planet. He's a remarkable man, and I'm very honored to have him on the program once a month. And we've talked about things that are just astonishing over the years. He's great. So good for you, and thank you for mentioning Tex Mars. I just want to underscore that.
Yeah, well, I think it's fantastic that you've got this relationship with him where you interview him once a month. We need all the people like you and Tex that we can get.
It's a thin line, Eric. It's a thin line. It's not to say there aren't a lot of volunteers, but they just don't have, and I'm not knocking anybody, they don't have the wisdom and the years and the perspective that you do. They don't have it. They want it, and when they read a book or something, they'll grab onto 2 or 3 tangent theses in it, and they'll pull them out and they'll run with those. As soon as you think you've found the answer, you're kind of lost. You got to keep digging. Always keep looking. One thing leads to another, to another, to another. And that's called connecting the dots. But it takes time, it takes years, it takes a lot of research, and it takes wisdom, which is what we allegedly gain and accrue over those years of doing the research. And it's very difficult to find younger people who have wisdom. Not their fault. Living in this day and age when they're addicted to the most vicious electronic device ever, the smartphone. You can put the computer in there as well. These young people, they don't have much of a chance, Eric. It's very hard for them to break through and to begin to talk to people like you who understand values, morality, and an ethic that we no longer have. It's been taken away from us. So these young people have a tough road to hoe.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned that. I think this gang-stalking thing, we can come full circle here. I think that this thing is very satanic, and I think it is satanizing our culture. It is one of many things that is satanizing our culture. But if you can convince, a significant portion of the culture to go ahead and, create a hostile environment for all these adversaries and enemies and potential terrorist threats, you've got a lot of nastiness going on there. Some of these people certainly are, that are involved. These surveillance role players will be covens and Satanists themselves, and others will be just dupes that are, useful idiots that are used. But in the process, it satanizes the culture and divides us from each other. It pits us against each other, creates a civil war situation, and it certainly is going to destroy the nation. And I think it's designed to do so because the people that are behind it have always wanted to destroy the United States. So my hope, and I'm sure yours in Texas, is that our institutions will somehow survive. That we can expose the traitors and the people who are. And keep our Constitution, keep our and keep our moral compass. Although, see, it's getting harder to do that as we get more satanized. So it's like the Soviet Union was satanized, and that was very deliberate. And the same thing is happening in America, and it's tragic.
That's what Tex is doing with his marvelous books, wonderful books. He's recording data to be kept and not lost to us, and that's crucial. You mentioned something earlier tonight, dissociative identity disorder, DID, used to be known as multiple personality disorder. That's a big one, and that's a subject of another whole program. That's a very common problem now. People hit with that. They have no idea what's going on. They literally lose themselves into it, and a lot of it's externally controlled. A lot of it is a fragmented reality of the self that it can never heal. It just doesn't. They're trauma-based mind control. They're taken apart as children. They never recover, and they end up with DID. These are wounded people. They're very sad. It's very tragic, and I don't know where they can go for help. The whole industry, of course, of psychiatric intervention and so-called therapy and healing is corrupt and full of many of the people who are perpetrating these things. So, we live in a very difficult time.
Yeah, extremely difficult. And, Yeah, this is a subject for a whole nother conversation, Jeff. The DID and the the trauma-based mind control, which back in the 50s and 60s was mostly carried out on children 6 and less. Now I think they've figured out how to do this electronically, so they don't have to rape the child to create the alter personalities based on the trauma or other some extreme abuse, which they have done for centuries. And then the Nazis and the CIA systematized it scientifically. Now I believe I've got the impression that they've learned how to do this electronically. No touch torture can cause dissociation and perhaps to some extent DID, but I'm not sure about that. But there are experts out there like Ellen Lachter and others who have worked with this, some from a Christian point of view and some from just a kind of scientific point of view.
Wow. Well, we're at the end here of our conversation. I'd love to have you come back in the future when you have something you'd like to put on the table. I'm here. I'll set the table for you. So, Eric, thank you very much for being here. It's been terrific.
And so much thank you, Jeff, for doing what you're doing and for having this conversation. It'd be great to get together sometime and spend a little more time about the global warming thing. Although it seems like Donald Trump said it's not for real. Who knows? He's reversed himself on other things, but right now it looks like it's not looming. But I think it would be good to do a show on that. Well,
let's do it. We'll get together and do that very thing. Thank you, Eric. Take good care of yourself. Be safe.
Okay, thanks, Jeff.
All right, good night. Okay, Dr. Eric Karlstrom, PhD, Professor Emeritus, and diving into things that we're not supposed to look into very much. But we will. And in fact, we'll be back with you tomorrow night. Take care. 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 Take care.